Welcome into this week's Coach's Corner. Jordan Woodruff with you, along with head coach of football, Scott Harmon. Today's episode brought to you by the National Guard. And, Coach, first off, go back to last week. You know, sports sometimes is just about surviving.
Yep.
And that's exactly what you guys did on Friday night. And with that, you pretty much, you still got to play some games, but that helped maybe secure a home playoff bid. So that was a very important game, and you guys survived.
It was a big one. It came down to the last, goal line stand there. We shouldn't have let it be that close. We got to do a better job of managing the clock when we're up 20 points. I'll take responsibility for that, and milk that clock a little bit more. We kind of felt like, getting out of there with the win was a good thing, but we can do some things better.
All right, and let's talk about that. You're up 20. They make a good comeback. You got to give them a lot of credit. They showed a lot of fight, but you did say you got to manage the clock better. I kind of know what that means. Run the football maybe a little bit more, but at the same time, it's hard when you're behind the chains like you were too.
Right. It was a kind of a catch-22 on that, and I totally understand as a play caller. You don't have a lot for a 1st and 35. You know what I mean? There's not in the a lot in the playbook for that. So, and we just made some penalties there, going down the stretch, jumping off sides twice on 4th and 10, just giving them little bitty opportunities that allowed them to stay in the game. And you have to give them some credit. Their kids fought hard and their coaches did a good job. Actually had a chance to win in the last couple of plays. If they make, if they hit the open kid there in the end, we're scrambling around trying to go get a field goal to win. So you live and you learn from those type of experiences. We're glad to come out with a win, and we'll move on from it.
Speaking of that, I mean, talk about field goal. Adrian kicks his first field goal. Turns out to be an important one. They got a pretty good field goal kicker themselves. That may change the dynamic of the game. They have all the momentum, it seemed like, at that time, but they didn't have the chance to go for that field goal because you guys had already kicked one earlier in the game.
That's right. We've been working hard on Adrian's kicking skills. He does a really good job during the week, kind of getting off by himself and doing those things. We give him a little card, and he does the kind of a little kicking routine, and then he'll come over and get his second half of the practice and his linebacker duties in. So we're real proud of where that has come and how much that's improved. So I also considered taking a safety in there late last week. Up 6, and kind of struggling a little bit in a long yardage situation, but we hadn't worked on it in practice. So that's one of our rules. If we haven't worked on it in practice, we don't put those kids in those positions in a game.
I actually said that in the broadcast, thought that maybe you may take a safety in that issue just because you were 6 up and you don't really lose a whole lot doing that. But you decide to kick it. They get good field position out of it, but the defense able to hold, and they had a low snap that got them back behind the chains a little bit when they were 1st and goal there at the 1. So, I mean, it was just it was a game I think you found out a lot about your kids because you really hadn't been in that tight one yet this year, and that was a game that came down to the final seconds.
We talked about that Monday. We always go over the good, bad, and the ugly, and all those things will do nothing but help us as we move forward, fighting through some adversities, getting some calls going against your way, having to make a big play on 1st down, another big play on 2nd down, let the guy get open on 3rd down a little bit, and then they made another big play. 3 out of those 4 downs, they made plays. So, kudos to the defense for holding up in there, and especially to some young kids that, really hadn't been getting a lot of game before that night.
All right, and another thing that I kind of mentioned during the broadcast, because, I mean, every coach, you're going to have your own philosophy of what to do in these situations. We talk about analytics in pro ball and college ball right now, but ultimately it comes down to a coach's gut.
Mm-hmm.
It's 1st and goal at the 1. You have just under a minute to go. You're thinking with the momentum, I think I know you well enough to know it probably didn't cross your mind, but was there that thought saying, hey, let's let them score? That way we have more time to go score ourselves.
That didn't, to be honest with you, because the clock management there at the end of the game was not real good in terms of the officiating. Some clock ran off when it wasn't supposed to, and then some clock didn't run when it was wasn't supposed to. So there were some issues there with the clock management and the officials. So at that point, we were, I talked to Rolo, I just mentioned it briefly, hey, we got to hold them out of here because we have 0 timeouts, and I don't think they're going to let, much clock be left when we get done.
Yeah, and what's interesting, too, I've called a lot of games over the years with you since you've been here at Ponca City. we've had some tight games, but there's been very few that go down to the final seconds. And I remember the one would have been in playoffs earlier against the Pulpa that year that came down to the final seconds.
Right.
So it's a different thing when you're having to coach in a game like that. You've been in that situation a lot before, but man, when you're under fire like you were in that, that's tough on the old coaches, isn't it?
It is tough, I see those coaches. These coaches work hard, you know what I mean. And you have a couple of calls go against your ways, and you think, oh my goodness, we're going to let this one slip away. So, fortunately, we didn't let that happen. We've been in some close ball games, and we're getting better at it. I told the kids, Ponca City probably would have found a way to lose that ball game, my first year here or maybe before I got here, because we weren't accustomed to winning, and winning is habitual, and you can't tell me any different. So I think all those things are starting to come into play as we mature in this program, and it takes baby steps in the right direction.
All right, let's turn our attention to this week's game. You got a Thursday game coming up. This week you have the short week to prepare. Next week you'll have your regular week, but you'll have Capitol Hill on the road. But this Putnam City team, this turns into another huge game for the Wildcats. We've talked about it, how big these 3 weeks, and this is kind of the end of those 3 weeks right here, where 4 seed, 3 seed, chance to play for 2 seed. It's kind of all on the line Thursday night.
Right. We talked about that 3 weeks ago, and those kids kind of looked at me like I'm crazy, after a tough scrimmage, and 3 going 0-4, to start the season. I tell them, I say, hey guys, all our goals are still ahead of us, and it's hard to sell that to a young kid when they're not for sure about it. But having the experience coming from last year and being able to fall back on those, the junior said, yeah, I said, remember what we talked about last year. So we talked about this 3-week stretch. We've taken care of business the first 2 weeks. This will be a short week that we have to prepare, and Putnam City Original is probably the best of those 3. So it'll be a real interesting game. I feel like if we can force them into just throwing it and taking away the run game, I feel like we'll have a good chance to win a ball game at home and kind of secure us a chance to play for a second spot week 10 and a first round bye.
Yeah, so let's go into that and mention that a little bit. You talked alluded to Putnam City, what they have, but let's go into a little bit more detail. So what do you see from this Putnam City team? And I'll let you just talk about both ends of the ball and what you guys are going to have to do maybe better than what you have done to get the win.
Well, it all starts with their quarterback. They've got a really good senior quarterback who's athletic. It reminds me a lot of Tay, to be honest with you. He runs well, he throws the ball well, he eludes pressure well. So we'll have to do a good job of containing him. We want to take his run game away and make him be a thrower. They've got some weapons on the edge. We'll have Xavier Parker back this week, so that'll help us a little bit back in the back end. So we feel like if we can contain the quarterback and force him to throw the football, that's what we need to do defensively. And offensively, we need to be a little more 50-50, kind of run the ball a little bit better, especially in key situations. And then we still, Tay does a good job, spreading people out, and, he's dangerous. I don't know if people realize, how long it's been since Ponca City's had, an athlete or a running back that's do some of the things that he's been able to do the last couple of years, because we haven't had one in my tenure here.
Yeah, and speaking of that with Tay, and I want to get a couple of more things. But first off, you talk about their similarities and quarterbacks in this game upcoming. I think I looked at it, and I think 65% of the offense and points scored have come at these two quarterbacks' hands, whether through the air or on the ground. So some similarities there. But with Tay, you see, and you know what he's like. Get him out of the pocket, right? I mean, that's kind of where he's at his best, right? And I know you got to keep in the pocket every once in a while, but man, Tay, when he's out of the pocket, and especially when the pocket breaks down, that's when he's at his best.
Yeah, he eludes pressure. He's doing a better job this year of keeping his eyes up. He's got a bunch of weapons out there, so he doesn't have to just pull it down and run. Right now, he can kind of find some time, and then he's smart enough to know when I need to run and get a first down. So we talk about that. Tay's a physical kid. I coached his daddy. Daddy played linebacker for me, so he's a physical kid. I want him to run out of bounds a little bit more than he has been here in the past to save his body a little bit. But I that's my kind of football. I respect that.
Well, let's talk about the decision with that. I mean, you kind of put him out there a little bit in the special teams. I talked to Tay a little bit about that last week, but you don't see that in 6A football very often. Is the quarterback getting out there to receive some punts and kicks?
Well, I know a lot about that. I did that in high school, and he's to me, he's a very similar athlete, a guy that can play pretty much any skill position they have, quarterback, wide receiver, running back. He can do it all. So we felt like, hey, let's just put our best runner with the football back there and try to get us some field position. We've got Luke that'll back him up a little bit. We've got X that'll back him up a little bit. And it also gives our defenders a break because, we're trying to find a spot where we can get them off of the field in situations and rest them a little bit.
All right, offense, and I got one more player to go through. Gavin Cunningham, 2 straight 100-yard games. He was just short 3 weeks ago with 98 yards, but really seeing him and Tay, I mean, they've had a good connection since the start, but you're seeing that get better and better, I feel like, throughout this season.
Well, I felt like that was Gavin's best all-around football game he's ever played.
He had some good blocks down as well, yeah.
He was doing a good job. He's a big physical kid. He's starting to, his second year in this offense, so we try to design some things to help him out. Him and Tay have a little bit of freedom in there. You try not to give them too much as high school kids because it's really on us, but we do give them a little bit of freedom in there, and each week they've grown exponentially. They were a little frustrated early with the process, and I told them, say, relax, I understand, and now things are coming to fruition, and he's going to be hard to handle. We look for a lot of man coverage this week, and if they want a man cover him, we'll sure utilize that.
Yeah, and defensively, I want to go through that real quick. Not really singling out any player. I mean, we knew there's going to be times it's going to be hit or miss with some of the guys getting their first big snaps throughout this year, but those guys, they've got all those snaps now that are playing out there for the most part, and you're starting to see, I think, some growth, especially in the secondary with your safeties. And I know that's a spot that's very particular for you, naturally. And those guys, they're coming up making plays, but also they're affecting the game in the back end on the pass, too.
Doing a real good job. We knew early, that these kids hadn't ever played, varsity football. And it's a 6A2 level. It'll take you a little time to adjust. They've adjusted well. They're big, long, fast athletes. PJ's doing a real good job. I think he's leading the team in tackles, right now, out of the bandit spot. And then Adriel is just getting better each week. He, early in the year, he kind of reminded me of a little old colt out there. He's just so long-legged, and he's going to be a big, nice-looking kid one of these days, and he's still maturing. But his physicality and his football savvy's really taken a big step up. And then you got to mention Tegan Hodgson, who does just a great job for us out in the flat. We've been very blessed with some strong safeties in my tenure here.
Once again, Adriel Miller, going back to that game, it's a low snap, but ultimately your guys have to get back there and make the play. That changed the whole dynamic there on that last possession when Adriel was able to get back there and get that tackle and bring him on down.
Right, it was a great call by Roland. Roland does a good job. He waits till he sees what's going on out there, and he signals it in real quick. One of the quickest defensive signal callers I've ever been around. We get the call in late. We don't let people dictate to us what's going on defensively. We try to dictate what's going on, and I think that's one of Roland's biggest assets. He knows how to put his playmakers in position to make plays.
All right, well, big game Thursday night, and Putnam City in town. Going to mean a lot when it comes to playoffs. And, Coach, best of luck, and we'll see you out there on the field.
I appreciate it. We look forward to having all you guys out there. We need the biggest crowd as we can get.
Get out there, everybody, and support them. Coach Scott Harmon, this has been your Coach's Corner today, brought to you by the National Guard. Jordan Woodruff saying so long. Until next time, go Cats.